Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about 10 Pound Poms Season 1. So this show came out in 2023, and it is a British-Australian show, a drama, and it was created by that of Danny Brocklehurst. And so this deals back in the 1950s, I believe, after the Second World War. And this is something I've never heard of. I've never heard of this show, and I've never heard of this term. And so when I had BritBox, only season 1 was available at the time. Season 2 will come out in February, but I won't have BritBox no more. So I'm thinking, should I renew or not? I don't know. Or maybe I'll get towards the end of the year. Doesn't really matter because, well, sadly, this show got canceled after 2 seasons. And so because I live in the States, I've just never heard of this term and everything. And so as I'm flipping around, browsing on BritBox, I'm looking for something new to watch and stuff. And I come upon this show. And I'm like, oh, okay, looks like a period piece. I love period pieces. So, I'll watch and everything. Why not? And holy crap. Talking about like an education history lesson. Because this is one of the reasons why I love streaming. I love watching period pieces and I love watching foreign shows. Because, because this isn't my country, I'm never taught this stuff in school. Heck, even the things that happen in my country, still they never taught us in school and everything. And I never knew tons of people from England or Britain, I should say, like Greece, Germany, Ireland. I never knew they migrated to Australia and basically got scammed and faced prejudice and everything. Not only that, but I finally got to learn just a tiny bit about the Aborigine people and stuff. I've heard of them back in the day when I was a teenager growing up on a show called Kratts Creatures, where, the Kratt brothers would go to other countries and talk about the animals. And one time they went to Australia one time and talked about the Aborigine people a little bit. And I got to see some people dressed up in the very traditional clothes and they were playing a musical instrument and everything. But I never really knew who they were. I just knew they looked like Native American people. And when I was in college, there was this Australian woman I was talking to online at one point, and she actually gave me a boomerang. I drew a picture of her, and in return, she sent me a boomerang and Vegemite. I licked the Vegemite and I threw it away. That stuff tastes horrible. But what I did not know is that you're supposed to eat it on toast. Well, she didn't tell me. But anyways, so in a way, I kind of got to eat for a split second a foreign food. But I still have my boomerang and everything. And I had to glue it back because I broke it. But anyways. So this woman I was talking to online, she's white from Australia, right? And she loves black dudes to death. But oddly enough, she loves black dudes from America and other countries. And so I asked her straight up, are there no black people in Australia? Because I had no idea in the early 2000s. I've never been to Australia. I've never seen an Australian television show. And she told me, yeah, there are black people in Australia, but they're mixed with Aborigine. And so I'm oh, okay, that's interesting. They're mixed with them and everything like that. So I'm thinking to myself back 20 something years ago, 25 years ago, okay, maybe the white Australians had slaves or something, and the black folks decided to mix with the Aborigine people or something like that. And I actually got to see and I asked her, well, what's the difference really? She's like, oh, they're a different shade of brown than other black people from other countries. At that time, I wasn't really thinking, you know what I'm saying, like what she was trying to say when she said, they were mixed with Aborigine, but she likes black folks from other countries and stuff. And so, I'm like, it just kind of went over my head, and I wasn't really thinking. But now, after watching this show, and knowing how, like, every time white Europeans went to other countries and tried to take over and, like, didn't like the brown colored people or the yellow colored people, like Asian, like black, indigenous folks and stuff, I'm starting now to think maybe, just maybe, she doesn't like Aborigine people and stuff. I really don't know because I don't talk to her no more. But I do remember a few years back, before I left college, I got back in touch with her because I had stopped talking to her. There was this one white actress slash singer from Australia she does not like. And this person's like extremely conservative and everything and has moved to America. And so I'm thinking, maybe she dislikes Aborigine, maybe she don't. Like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? But like, I was just kind of like, well, if you like black dudes, then why not date the black people from your country? You know what I'm saying? But because they're mixed with Aborigine, she doesn't like that for some reason. So I'm starting to think maybe, just maybe, she could be racist toward the Aborigine people, especially now after watching this television show and everything. And so, like, yeah, I never, ever, ever, never knew that, like, white British people were treated very badly over in Australia. Like, I know Britain's a very, like, hated country from back in the day, but I didn't know this many people hated their behinds. Like, I knew Americans didn't like them at one point. The Irish don't like them. Indian countries, Asian countries, but, like, I didn't think Australia. I know French don't. The French people didn't like them and stuff. And I never would have guessed the Australians because I don't know nothing about Australian people and stuff, you know? Like, my knowledge of them is very limited and everything. But I never would have thought in a million years they would show prejudice to, like, the British people or prejudice towards the Aborigine people and stuff. And even though this show is not based on no real life person, it is, however, based on real life events and stuff like this. So, the reason why this show is called like a 10-pound like poms, which I didn't know what the heck that word even meant, because I don't know nothing about Euro slang other than British Euro slang that I've seen, like, what you call like underwear, which I do not like the word y'all use for underwear. That's too close to the freaking N word. But like, like the different like, phrases for like the lavatory, restroom, and the trunk of a car and everything. It's like, I know slang like that, or like where you're playing at, or like you're mad, or you're mental, or something like that, but like I've never heard of this phrase before, and I hope that God is not a racial slur. But after the research I've done, it appears not to be. Or at least that's what Google AI. I hate Google AI. You just ask Google one question, and AI just pops up. But like it says it's not, and apparently it's supposed to mean pomegranate. I don't understand that. But anyways. But apparently, the reason why they're 10 pounds is because that's the price that it costs to go over there. See, after the World War, with the second one and everything, like Australia was creating many, many jobs, and they needed to fill the population of their land. So they came up with like a scheme and everything. Apparently, New Zealand did the exact same thing that was very, very similar. And so they would promise British people, Italian and Germans and like Greek people and everything, like prosperity, like paradise. Oh, you'll live in the greatest homes, and you'll have like the greatest jobs, and stuff like that, like from your living conditions right now, because Europe got hit pretty hard during like the Second World War. And I think Britain was struggling financially, because I believe they was struggling for like at least over 100 years at one point. because every period piece I've ever seen, especially this new one called The Buccaneers, apparently, like with the Buccaneers, like British people would try to find wealthy, like American people to marry and everything. And I never knew about that either. And for some reason, no matter what period piece I see, no matter what time period is in, whether it's ancient days or like modern days or even just 100 years ago, it seems that nobody likes London. They keep talking about like how like they struggle there and it's poor there and it's horrible there and no jobs there and homeless there and just all kind of stuff. I'm just like, I'm gonna take their word for it because I don't live over there, and a lot of these period pieces, even though they are fictional and everything, they do base things off of real life. And so, like, a lot of British people, I guess, were like, having hard times, and they thought, oh, well, this is like paradise and a better job, then why not? And it's only £10. That's like Euro money, like and stuff. I don't really know British money that well. I know euros. I know £10. £10, the equivalent of the day, is supposed to be like £545, I believe. Now, there's one money term, a quint or something like that. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's in the hundreds or the thousands or what. And there's another word I don't know that's a money term and stuff. But it ain't my money, so I'm not familiar with it, you know what I'm saying? But like that's how much it costs just to go over there. And so when they went over there, because this whole thing was called like the Assisted Passage Migration Scheme. And it started around 1940, like 1945. It ended in 1980 something. 40 whole years. So when these British people went over in like boats and planes and stuff, the moment they got there, they're like, what the heck is this crap? This ain't paradise and everything. They basically lived in a commune and everything, where they lived in these hostel type, like, buildings. They look kind of like really tiny metal, kind of round shape, like warehouses or canteen type trailer type things. And they were basically one room. Now there might be a second room for like say that the parents live in and or like the children or something like that. But basically it was just a one room living space. And then like, the adults would have like their own room with a bed and everything. And you have like the couch for like the kids and stuff like that. And so like there was like no kitchen and no restroom. The restroom, they had like an outhouse, porta potty type thing that like used the bathroom in, and they had like showers on the outside. And they had to eat like breakfast and like dinner and stuff in like this other bigger building with everybody else. And I'm just kind of like, holy crap. And that's basically what them people said back in them days and stuff. They couldn't believe it, you know what I'm saying? Like they was lied. This was not what they was promised and everything. And and it makes you wonder, how the heck you gonna shower outside in the freezing cold and everything? And so, like, it was basically just like a scheme to repopulate their country and, like, fill their jobs that they had just now created and everything. And when they was there, a lot of them were treated like crap and everything by like the Australians, they were made fun of and, there was bias towards them. And some of them got some pretty okay jobs. Some of them got no jobs. Some of them got huge manual labor and everything. And like digging holes and trenches and, other little things and working in like boutiques. And I'm just kind of like, man, like this is something that was never taught to us in school during the World War time when they were trying to teach us about that and everything. Then again, I don't really remember them teaching us about war. Man, I'll tell you this about my country right here, right now. They are trying, especially now, they are trying so hard to like erase history and rewrite history and everything, especially when it comes to like black people because of the new administration and everything and the conservative people and stuff. Like they're getting rid of like slavery exhibitions and museums and taking away black books and everything or anything DEI, and pretend some of them are literally pretending like slavery just literally never happened. Like this one senator guy from I think Florida or something like that. I don't think he's a senator no more. He tried to become president and that didn't happen. But like he basically said, and I kid you not, that slaves learn valuable skills and everything. What valuable skills did a slave learn when they got taken from their home, beat nearly to death, and physically and sexually assaulted and worked for free and called the N-word? Like, what valuable skills did they learn? Was it to run real fast when they tried to escape or something like that? And they are literally acting like it never happened because it's called white guilt, plain and simple as that. Like they don't want to feel bad and they don't want people knowing their ancestors were crap. And that's kind of how, like, reminds me kind of a little bit of this show and stuff. Like when black people in America fought in World War II, they came home thinking they would be treated better, be treated like heroes. Nah, that didn't happen at all. They were still treated like crap. And after watching this show, I never knew Aborigine people fought in World War II. And this one character, he fought in the war. He came back and people still treated him like crap and his people. And just like the Native Americans and even some of the blacks in like America back in like the olden days and stuff, they lived in a certain like area of land because they weren't allowed to live in the other places where white people was at. And after watching this show, the Aborigine people, it was a similar thing with like them. And similar to like, the Native Americans, especially the indigenous people, which are technically Canadian, the term like it's the equivalent of like a Native American in America. So like the indigenous people of Canada. My God, like, taking their kids, trying to like assimilate them in the culture, brainwash them, trying to make them dress like them, act like them, have their religion, talk like them and everything, and take their kids from like their parents and crap. And if the parents tried to get them back, they were met with force and everything. And after watching this show, a similar thing what happened. Like this young boy got hit with a car by two white men. And then the Aborigine dude, whose name I can't remember in the show, he basically told this one guy that, oh, the kid is dead. But the kid didn't die. Because they said that like, if an Aborigine kid is sick or get hurt, they will be taken from their parents and adopted into like a white family. And this one racist character named Dean, he got drunk in this racist rant talking about, they're not like us and we take their kids and try to make them better, but they don't want to learn and blah, 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 and stuff like that. And it's just like, holy crap. It's like a very similar thing happened over here in America and over in Canada. It's literally like back in the olden days, no matter where white people went and lands they tried to take, they all acted the same. And it all came from Britain. Like I couldn't believe that crap. Or like Ireland and crap. It's like no matter where they went, whether it was the North American continent of like America and Canada, whether it was China, whether it was South Africa, whether it was India and everything, they always try to like take their land and convert their people and then treat them like crap. New Zealand and Australia and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh, I forgot to mention the black folks of Australia. So I forgot to add this to my little thing I was talking about. But I read that many years ago, black people actually willingly migrated to like Australia and everything. And I don't know if them and the Aborigines got along, but hey, they mixed up and, made some babies and stuff like that. Because I was always curious after that one girl told me that black folks is mixed with Aboriginal. Like, how the heck did black folks get over there? Like, was it slavery or something like that? But no, apparently they went there way before that and everything. And so, like, let's see, where am I at? So yeah, it's just kind of like wherever those like European people went, they just tried to take people's land. Like, hey, this is our land now, and it's just kind of like crazy. Like, they are literally the originators of like colonization and everything. And now my freaking country's trying to do this crap. Like, I don't know what the heck is going on, man. I do not recognize my country right now. It's just like crazy and stuff. And so with these people that migrated to like Australia, they had to stay there for 2 whole years. They could go back after 2 years, but they would have to pay way more money and everything, which many of them just stayed in like Australia. Then, like, um, around the 60s, like 1960s, over 80,000 like British people went over there, and millions were like constantly going over there and stuff. But it's just kind of like, why would they keep going if like they could call back home and write letters and be like, yo, what you like, seeing in the newspaper and what you're hearing on the radio and what you're seeing on the TV, if you were lucky enough to have a TV back in those days, like, it's not what they're saying, you know what I'm saying? And then the thing, New Zealand did a very similar thing. I couldn't believe that. Like, this is just like wow. You know what I'm saying? Like, the things you just never know about life in other cultures. And this is why I love streaming shows and shows that have like messaging and everything. But of course, oh no, over here can't have no messaging in television shows because a certain race of people get pissed off because they feel guilty and everything. And like, well, why y'all have to hate on us and everything? Like that stuff never happened back in the day. Like, it's just a difference of opinion, and it's just like, they don't want to learn and everything. But I found this show to be very fascinating. I wish it could have lasted longer than 2 seasons, and I wish a season will last more than 6 episodes. Now, for the most part, for those 6 episodes, they can do a pretty good job with like spreading out the storylines and like the characters and the plots. But some plots kind of get kind of lost. Some characters kind of get a little lost, and like, some characters are just completely forgotten. Like, what the heck happened to Dean after he got the crap beat out of him after the 3rd episode? He just completely disappeared. And, the young boy in the show, it's like the writers could not think of what to do with him and everything. So they kept giving him one plot storyline after like another. The dude literally had 3 completely different storylines in 6 episodes, but there was really no lingering on them for too long. There was no resolve with him. Maybe in the 2nd season, hey, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Because I haven't seen the 2nd season. But there are like pretty much like a small group of characters that feel a little bit bigger than what they are. But for the most part, they do a pretty good job in spreading some out, like the family and everything, the main family of the show. Like the 2 parents, they do a pretty good job, like, because since they're the main characters, telling their stories and like giving them development and everything. Same thing with, I think her name is Kate, who's looking for her son. But it's everybody else for the most part. It kind of get lost in translation. It's just like, like there's this one lady who just seems depressed and everything, and it's just kind of like, I'm not sure what the heck is going on with her storyline. I wish they could have just saved her for like season 2 or something like that and fleshed her out more, or made this an anthology series or something. And her husband is just kind of like, where is all like their storyline going? Like, like, I'm not really sure. And then the dude who kind of runs the place with like his mom, it's like, where is this going? Like the young son, where is that going? the daughter and everything. Like, you see where her story is going, but there's like a whole backstory with her that feels a heck of a lot more interesting, and they're kind of just rushing her storyline to put her in a love interest and stuff. And then there's like that Kate lady again. Like, I know what's going on with her son, but the thing with her husband is kind of like, you think he's this big horrible man, but he's actually not. So it's kind of disappointing when he's not. But then they try to add all these other storylines onto these characters, and it's like they don't have enough time to tell all of this stuff. And so I really wish they could have paced themselves out more with more episodes, but sadly, European television shows are anywhere between 6 to 8 to 10 to 13 episodes. And like now, American television is doing the exact same thing. And now it takes like 2 years to come out with a season and everything. And I really miss the days of them being like 20 to 30 episodes a season and coming out within like a year of each other. And so, for the most part, like I said before, this is like a really good show and some really good drama and everything. But it's kind of like, some of these extra storylines they added to these characters. Oh, this is what I really hate when, like, every time I watch a British show, sometimes they do that, sometimes. And it's just like, just save it for like the second season, like the main father character. He's going through PTSD from the war. And then next thing you know, in the first episode, he was in the passenger seat and Dean ran over somebody. So he's having to deal with that. Then on top of that, he's an alcoholic. Then on top of that, he's having marital problems. And on top of that, this guy wants him to like work with him, but then that guy ends up dying, and then he befriends this Aborigine dude, but then the Aborigine dude is pissed at him one minute and then friends with him the next. And it's just like, it's too much. There's too much going on sometimes, and it really needs to be spread out. This is why you need more episodes and stuff. This is why you need to leave some storylines for like another season and stuff. But other than that, I do recommend people watching this show. It's like really fascinating. But one thing that does bug me is that, the premise when you watch this show is like the British people and other people migrating to Australia. But you really only get the point of view from like the British people and like, there's a tiny bit of the indigenous people who are not indigenous, but Aborigine people who are already there. The problem is, what about like the Irish and the German and the Italian people? How are they treated by the Australians? You never see. Like, it would have been really fascinating to explore their characters instead of just making them like guest stars or whatever. You know? Also, once again, you hear about like the adoption agency with like the Catholic Church and everything. Like, I'm not Catholic. I don't try to get into religion, other people's religions, and judge them and nothing like that. Or, and I don't understand what the heck is really going on in the Catholic Church. Like, is it depicted the way it's depicted in these shows? Because every time there's a period piece, especially in Europe, like the Catholic Church seems very shady when it comes to like taking orphans and giving them homes and everything. They really don't want their biological parents to seem to like have them no more. And sometimes they lie, like, well, we ain't got no kids over here. What you talking about? Stuff like that. I've noticed that with a lot of period pieces I've seen, but I've mostly seen that happen in like Britain. But I didn't think that would also happen in like Australia, where it's kind of like this kind of like shady thing where they really don't want their kids to go back to their biological parents and stuff. And but yeah, I wish the show would have also focused on how the Australians treat like, the other like, people from other countries and stuff. Not to mention, the show starts off very prejudiced and racist and everything about the Aborigines and like, the Britons, how the way the Australians treat them, but then it kind of just fades away. And then you don't really see that no more. And it's just kind of like, well, isn't that supposed to be like, the big emphasis on like the show and everything, and not your traditional like drama tropes and everything, like it kind of forgets about that. And I really don't like that. I would like this, even though I hate racism and prejudice and stuff, I want to learn and see what the heck these people went through, you know what I'm saying? Through the eyes of a fictional show that is grounded in realism and everything. And it kind of drops the ball on that a little bit, just to have like a wife who cheats on her husband, another wife who wants to cheat on her husband, and stuff like that. Yeah, those other storylines are good for character growth and development, but don't forget about what this show was originally about, and sadly it does. Okay, so character bios. I'm going to start off with the Roberts family, the main characters, Terry. I actually recognize this actor from Luther, and I'm just kind of like, wait, hold up. If he's from Luther, then he must be like Indian or something like that and not white. But yeah, the actor is actually Anglo Indian and stuff, which really confused me. So I'm all like, is he playing an Indian character or is he playing a white character? However, like, he is one of the few British actors to play an actual British character on this show. Most of the British, like, characters are played by, like, Australians and stuff. But Terry is pretty much the main character, like, of the show, one of the main. He is a man struggling with, like, his past. He also is struggling with, like, his demons. He's an alcoholic. One of the reasons why he's an alcoholic and struggling is he has PTSD from that of World War II. Not because of what he saw, but because of what he did. We won't find out what he did until much later in the series. But like, what he did was like, he was out, I guess, like in the streets at night by himself patrolling, and he stumbled upon that of a Nazi, but a young one, about 18, 19, something like that. He told him to freeze, and the boy put his hands up, but then Terry shot him anyways. Because he killed that boy in cold blood, he feels horrible despite that boy being an enemy. Now, of course, we don't know this boy's like situation as to why he joined like the military and stuff. Did he want to do it because he wanted to, or was he forced to? Because back in those days, most likely a lot of people were forced to and everything. So it causes him problems, and his demons have caused problems for his family, especially that of his wife. So, the first time we see him, he's drunk and stumbling over and passed out. And then they move on over to Australia. He works out in the fields where he faces like prejudice and everything, mostly from that of Dean and a little bit from his boss. So he's having a hard time adjusting because Dean will not let up on him. Dean will not let him like use the restroom and like the porta potties, makes him do it in the bushes, and just kind of all kinds of like horrible stuff. To the point where those two get into a fist fight, and Dean, as old as he is in his 60s, is actually able to whoop on Terry. Because of this, the boss decides to make them two literally hug and kiss it out, literally. And then those two become like drinking buds and everything. Until that fateful night of when Dean was drunk behind the wheel and flying down the dirt roads and hits an Aborigine boy. Dean could care less and wants to just like run, but Terry wants to actually help him. After this, Terry literally just cannot deal with the grief of what he did and turns himself in, despite being invited to Dean's house and meeting his family and this and that. The cops are willing to believe Terry, however, Dean lies and said they hit a kangaroo. After this, Dean starts to treat him like crap again, even when like Terry goes to a bar to get a drink. Dean, who does not work there but drinks there, forces him to drink outside in the back. And when he's there, he meets like Ron, one of his co-workers and stuff. who's Aborigine. And I'm just like, holy crap, they literally made the Aborigine people drink behind the bar and everything outside. Like, it's horrible. Anyway, him and Ron become friends and stuff, but he is still dealing with like what he did and doesn't let Ron know. But then at one point he did ask Ron, did a little Aborigine boy ever go to like the hospital for any kind of reason, stuff like that. Once Ron is able to put two and two together, Ron is extremely pissed at him. They kind of like hash it out, but then they end up becoming friends again. After that, he gets a business proposal from this one guy to start up like this restaurant out in the beach where him and Ron are gonna fix the place up. However, the problem is that guy ended up dying because of the living conditions of like his little what are them things called? Like a canteen, like a trailer. I don't know what they call it. And so I don't know what's gonna happen after that. However, Ron is still having to deal with like the fallout of like his consequences and stuff like that when it comes to that of his family. His wife is furious. His wife, they're at like odds in and everything. He finds out that his daughter is like pregnant and stuff. And not only that, but his son has been skipping school and been getting punished at school. So the man has a lot to deal with and everything. And all of that stress is just constantly causing him to drink. You're always seeing him with a drink in his hand. Even to the point where he went to like this house party where of his wife boss, and he got drunk and made a fool of himself and fell in the pool. And on top of that, his wife is contemplating if she wants to cheat on him and stuff. I have to say, he's a very compelling character. Like, you feel sorry for the dude. Like, he's struggling so much internally and everything, and it's happening externally. And not only that, but he's actually a pretty decent person. He's not racist. He's willing to befriend an Aborigine. When he finds out his daughter, got pregnant by a black man, he wasn't pissed. Originally he was, because he just thought it was a regular, I guess like a regular person, like a white person or whatever. But once he finds out it's black, he calms down. The wife, however, did not calm down by that. Annie is Terry's wife. Now I recognize her either from the White Princess or the White Queen television show. So it's been a while since I've seen her. And she's the only other star in this show I actually recognize. I don't recognize nobody else. So anyways, and she is the one trying her best to keep everything in order in her family. She's kind of like the one who wears the pants in the family. She takes care of the kids and she's having to deal with her drunken husband. When he comes home drunk and passes out, this is when he lands on top of a newspaper and she sees about like the whole, go to Australia for 10 pounds thing. So that's what they do. She realizes they need a fresh start in life and everything. She was very shocked and surprised to see that start is nothing but like not what they promised. But she's trying to make the best of it and stuff. And so when she's out shopping and everything, she sees an indigenous woman and not indigenous, but an Aborigine woman. And the Aborigine woman is forced to go in the back of the line, even though she was in the front. Annie, who's not having this crap, demands to talk to the manager. When she talks to the manager thinks she's there for an assistant manager position. I knew exactly where this was going. I could smell it from like a mile away or see it or whatever. So Annie decides, you know what? I do need a job, and the laws aren't going to change in this country when it comes to Aborigine people. So she doesn't mention nothing about the Aborigine woman and takes the position. As soon as she goes outside, the Aborigine woman looks at her and basically just cusses her out. Oh boy. But her job as being like an assistant manager and having to be tested and this and that, she's really getting over with the boss. To the point where the boss is like inviting her to this fancy, swanky, like country club, like house party that they're having. Like she's really moving all up Jefferson style and everything, you know? And so the problem is like her family, they're like embarrassing her. And she's all about like, appearances and stuff. Like here she is, this extremely poor woman, living where she's living. She's British, these people are Australian, and she's trying to get in good with like, the ritzy people and stuff. Even to the point where they invite her to attend I think the first Australian like televised like something or another, you know what I'm saying? And so, because they don't have a TV, and so they get to go to the studio and watch everything happen and stuff. And so she's just kind of like, she's feeling pretty proud about herself, you know what I'm saying? But like I said before, her family is embarrassing her. And she just can't deal with her husband no more. When she finds out that he ran over that, well, he actually didn't run over that boy, but he was in the passenger seat and didn't say nothing. And like a whole week went by and he didn't say nothing. That was pretty much like the straw that broke the camel's back. And she had had enough, doesn't really want to talk to him and everything. And then on top of all that, the same night finds out her daughter is pregnant. Boy, when she finds out that like her daughter, 16 years old, had sex with a black boy and is about to have a biracial son, she slapped the taste out her daughter's mouth. But she doesn't appear to be racist because she tried to help out that Aborigine woman. But when she found out that like her daughter messed around with a black dude, and of course over in Britain in the 1950s, that was a huge no-no, she just lost it. But then she calmed down and is gonna help her daughter out. But all of this stress is like causing her to start drinking herself and want to have an affair. She met this one guy, and this is another part where I don't think she's racist because this other guy is like another race. Maybe it's just like black people she don't like because she's British, but I don't know. But anyway, she really is starting to see that he's kind of flirting with her slightly and everything. And to the point where he invites her to like his hotel. She gets all dolled up and she goes over there. And at first she starts to have that affair, what we can see. She's making out, she's on the bed with him. But she's only daydreaming. I'm like, thank God. I don't want her to go down that route. And she realized that, if she doesn't leave now, she's going to live out her fantasy. And she leaves and stuff. I like how her character is like, trying to hold it together in her family. It's like when her son went missing, the daughter's pregnant, the husbands are drunk and stuff like that. It's a lot weighing on her, and it's hard because she's a foreigner in another country, which is ironic because Australian people are daughter to that of Terry and Annie, and she is very rebellious and everything. Like when we first see her, she's with her brother and they're playing. I guess y'all call this football. I call it soccer, but like they're playing with the kids and. Like she starts touching her stomach. I'm like, I already know what that means. She's pregnant. And she is. But who is she pregnant by? Well, we really don't know this person. We just see a photograph and he's black. Yes, she is down for the brown. She does the complete opposite of everything her parents tell her to do, I've noticed in this. We see her hanging out with some girls and she gets her ear pierced by them. They tell her to stop messing around with boys after they find out she's pregnant and she's trying to get with like Stevie and stuff. But for the most part, she is a rebel. Like, she's just teen angst all about her. And so she's trying her best to keep her pregnancy hidden by wearing this giant yellow like coat. And it's getting to the point where she has a bit of a problem. See, she is very smart and she's about to go to this one school. I don't know if it's a private school. I don't know if it's an all-girls school. I'm pretty sure it's not college because I don't think women were allowed to go to college back then. Well, at least in America, they wasn't. And so, but but some of them did, but like, because they were starting to be allowed to go in the 1950s, but a lot of their parents didn't want them to. But I don't know how it is over there. But in order to wear like this fancy new dress and of course her uniform or whatever, her stomach is starting to show. And so she goes to Kate and that's like, oh, and I got this friend who has a situation. She needs to get rid of a baby. What do I do? But Kate will not help her, but a local girl overhears this and tells her and gives her instructions to meet up with this strange guy. And that's what she does. She hops in the car with a complete strange man and he takes her halfway across town. You see the terrified look of fear in her face as she's having to lay in the back seat with like a blanket over her and stuff because she's not supposed to be seen. Once he tells her, all right, you have to walk the rest of the way, this is when the babies start kicking and the man realizes, oh crap, it's too late to get an abortion and everything. Like, you're stuck with this baby and everything. So she literally has no idea what to do, but Kate literally told, you just got to tell your parents, or well, this friend of a friend and everything. But Kate realizes what she's talking about is her. So she has no choice. She tells like her dad and then tells the mom and then gets the taste slapped out of her mouth. And it does make you wonder, where is this storyline gonna go? She's about to have a biracial black child. That is a massive no-no in the 1950s, whether you're living in Australia, England, or America, or Canada. And so, they weigh the option of adoption and everything. And so they basically go to like the doctor. He's like, hey, look, once the baby is born, the adoption stuff is set up and nobody will never know your daughter was ever pregnant and stuff. And of course, they don't like to give the child back to the biological parents and stuff. So where is this going to go in season 2? Well, she's going to end up keeping the baby. I can tell because even though season 2 is not out on BritBox, the little episodes are there. They're just kind of like have a shadow over them and everything. And I see her holding the baby in the later part of season 2. So most likely she kept it. That and because of Stevie. Stevie's fallen in love with her left and right and wants to help her raise this baby. I'll get to him a little bit later. And so her and Stevie aren't really dating, but she does kind of like him. And because he's fallen in love with her really, really fast, she's starting to like him back. Now see, once you go black, you ain't supposed to go back. It is the law. But this is 1950, so going back will be the safer thing for her. And so, but I'm surprised though. Clearly, she dated a black dude and had a baby by him, so it makes you think that maybe she likes people of color. So it makes you wonder why she never tried to get with an Aborigine person, but she probably feel like, she's too much in trouble as it is. However, she goes into distress and has to deliver the baby because when her mom got I forgot to mention, Annie got arrested. Basically, Annie was trying to stop, okay, so what happened was when Terry's friend died, these workers came in and started burning all of Terry's stuff because they're going to put another family in that place even though the conditions are not safe. Annie tried to stop this, so she mobilized the people in the little, little commune that they're in, the little community and stuff. Well, the community decided to turn from a peaceful protest into a riot. They set the place on fire. She tried to stop. Cops came. She got arrested. She called her boss and got out of jail, lickety split. And so, like, but when she got hauled away by the cops, this caused Patty to freak out and chase behind the cop car. And then she started bleeding, and then she had to have the baby delivered. And the Australian nurse is all like, well, I ain't gonna say the word she used, but she be like, this baby's black. So that lets me know just how Australian people feel about black folks, if they feel about the Aborigine people in that way, you know. Peter. So he is the son of Terry and Annie. This character has somewhat like plot armor convenience and everything. It's like the writers don't really know what to do with him, and he always gets out of certain situations for the most part. Like they're always coming up with one plot after another with him, and they never really seem to go nowhere with those plots. So so he's a very nice kid, like very sweet, very kind and everything, shy, timid, and stuff like that. He has no friends. We find this out very early when he starts collecting blue stuff for this bird, and his sister tells him you need real friends and everything and not a bird. So he found the bird near his school that he plays around with. So the teacher sees him over in like the near a tree near the woods of the school, and asks what he's doing, but he doesn't want to say and doesn't want to pull out what's in his pockets. So the teacher spanks him with like a stick on the hand and put bruises on his hands. He runs away after this and goes back into the woods, and the teacher never chases after him. So I'm all like, okay, where is this gonna go? Well, he decides he's gonna cover his hands up with these giant gloves. Him and his sister, man, they're the worst liars ever. So while trying to hold a spoon with these giant gloves on his hand, his dad doesn't understand what the heck he's wearing these gloves for, makes him take them off, and then sees the marks from like the switch and everything. And so his dad is now finding out that he's being disobedient in school and this and that, which causes a problem between Terry and Bill, because Bill's all like, you need to discipline your son. Anyways, we find out later on, like when I guess he's at school and still with no friends and still playing around with that bird. He doesn't go to class, but then he meets a group of Aborigine kids, which at first he's a little afraid of them. But they just want to play with him, and he decides to start playing with them. We don't know who these kids are or who they belong to, but we never really see them interact. And so it's just kind of like, okay, so we see he's like, at first he's a little scared of them, but then he's all like, oh, they're not so bad, you know what I'm saying? But then it's kind of like, okay, well, where's this gonna go? We don't see them play really no more. We don't know none of these kids' name and nothing like that. Until one episode, we see him playing with one of the kids. And they're just walking around, and they end up, and they find some like house that looks kind of abandoned with all this stuff in the yard. They're like, oh, let's go exploring. Lots of kids love doing that. I used to love doing stuff like that. Well, there's an old man living there, and he don't want nobody on his property, and he has a rifle. So he starts shooting at both the kids. They take off running in different directions, and Peter gets lost. So lost that he just ends up like falling near a tree because like he's so scared. And like, I'm all like, oh no. So now I guess the whole thing with him is he's going to be lost. The parents are looking for him, and so is the town. And that's what happens. But because of plot armor, they find him the next morning next to a tree, and then nothing after that. Other than that, he's just happy to be an uncle and everything. And I'm just kind of like, they really don't have nothing for this kid. They put him in one situation after another, and it just goes completely nowhere. Stevie, he's a kid who befriends Patty the first day they meet them. He's pretty nice and everything like that, and then when he sees that like Bill is trying to steal something from his dad, he goes in there, and we don't know what exactly he does. But Patty can see this. It seems like he might be like a bad kid, but he's not for the most part. But you will not insult his honor, and he has apparently some like rival that comes completely out of nowhere, and they decided to have a boxing match, which Stevie pretty much gets his butt kicked until the very end. And so there's not much with him. He's just a love interest for that of like Patty, which he falls in love with her very, very fast. He realizes at the end of one episode that like she's pregnant when he touches her stomach after making out with her. And then it's kind of like, okay, where's this gonna go? Like, is he gonna tell somebody? Is he gonna judge her or whatever? Next episode, like, they don't even discuss it. It doesn't even get brought up no more until she goes into labor, and then he takes her to the hospital, and then he tells her parents that he wants to marry her, and he presents a ring. Where did he get this ring? Don't know. And the dad's like, no, this ain't gonna happen. But the mom is kind of like, well, hear him out and everything. The mom is thinking in a very 1950s kind of way. Girls aren't really allowed to do nothing and not really allowed to have jobs or go to school or go to college and stuff. They need men to take care of them, and she wants to get her daughter out the house, especially with this biracial baby. So she's just kind of like, all right, maybe this is the best solution and everything. And so that's basically his storyline for the first season. Not much is there. Don't really know him. He's very underdeveloped and stuff like that. Dean is an old racist, plain and simple as that. You can tell this actor is having fun whenever his character is drunk and laughing and stuff. He's just eating up the scenery. But he hates Aborigine people and he hates British people. And so he gives Terry an extremely hard time when he first meets him until they're forced to be friends, and then they go drinking. Like I told you before, they get into that car accident and stuff. After the car accident, he invites like Terry and his entire family over to his place to meet his family and have like some barbecue and like, have a couple of drinks. And when Dean gets super drunk, this is when we start to find out more about how white people in Australia treat the Aborigine people. He talks about like how they adopt their kids and this and that, and it's just hateful, racist ranting. But he gets so drunk that he gets tired of his dog and just completely punches the crap out of his dog, knocking the dog out. And he's a very, very hateful, abusive person. But once he finds out that Terry ratted him out, then he's back to hating him and everything. Until Ron is able to put the pieces together and he follows Dean to like a bar, and once he waits for Dean to come out all pissed drunk, wearing like a mask, he completely beats the snot rockets out of Dean. To the point where Dean is never seen on the show again. He's not dead, at least I don't think he is, but he didn't return. Speaking of Ron, he's an Aborigine person, and he's actually one in real life, the actor is, so that's a great thing. I'm glad they got actual Aborigine people to play Aborigine people, because over here in America, it's not like that. Over here in America, if you need like a Mexican person, a Pakistani person will play them, or an Italian person, or a white person, or a Cuban or a Puerto Rican, but not a Mexican. Same thing with certain Asian races. If you need a Chinese person, they'll get like a Japanese person. If you need a Japanese person, they'll get a Chinese person. It don't make no sense. So I'm very happy to see an actual Aborigine person play an actual Aborigine person. And so not too much is really known about this character. It doesn't really focus on the Aborigine people this show does. But we see him and Terry start to like bond and be friends, and Terry has to sneak him these type of like, I don't know what the things are. They look kind of like cookies or cakes or crackers, but they're sweet. I guess Aborigine people are not allowed to eat white food or something like that. That's the impression I'm getting, which wow, you know what I'm saying? But basically, Terry goes to him and asks, has anything happened to any of your people lately going to the hospital? And Ron just lies and said the boy died. So then, the police, well, no, first, Ron goes to the Aborigine, territory, but they kick him out because white people are not allowed over there. However, when a cop comes driving by, they freak out, panic, scatter, and they send Ron to talk to the cop. I'm not sure why. Ron does kind of act like the leader, kind of, what I'm saying, of the group. And so the cop asked him, plain and simple, this man came to me and said an Aboriginal boy got hit. What do you know about that? He's all like, nothing. And so he tells, he says, it was Terry and Dean gave him a wild story about hitting a kangaroo. Boy, Ron put two and two together and he was furious. He took out Dean. But then this was the weird thing. When he got back in his car, there was it looked like a white man was in the car with him with a mustache. And he's all like, what are you gonna do about the other one? It kind of looked like Terry. So I'm like, was Ron hallucinating or something? Anyways, when he goes back to his village, he's talking to the Aborigine lady that Annie was originally gonna help out. This woman, I think, is his aunt. And so she's all like, all right, you took care of one of them, you're going to take care of the other one. He's all like, it's complicated and stuff. And, she's all like, well, you got to do something about this and everything. So he lures Terry into a trap. He basically tells him he needs help with something, drives him out to a beach cliffside, and then hangs him over the cliffside, threatening to throw him over. And Terry's upset, he's all like, it was an accident. He feels horrible about it. But Ron can start to see that Terry's having his PTSD. So he basically tells him, don't you ever talk to me again or I'll kill you and stuff like that. But that threat is hollow because, when he starts to see that Dean is treating Terry like crap again, he starts to befriend that of Terry. And so the two are gonna work on that one dude's business, but like I said before, the one dude ended up dying. And so after that, really, there's not much about Ron. Him and that one guy he was gonna go to business with, they talked to Terry about their time in the war. And so, because all three of them served and everything. But then when that dude died, we see Ron at the funeral, but he has to sit by himself on the opposite side of the aisle with the other people and stuff. And so that's all we see of him in the last episode and nothing more. He seems like a really good character who, will protect his people and stuff. And he explained to Terry why he lied about the boy dying. Basically, if the cops find out the boy got hurt, they will take them from the parents and get them to a white family and stuff. Something I never knew about. Bill is a British man who works in some type of business company. Now the actor is actually Australian instead of British. And so I'm not quite sure where he works at, but he wears a suit and tie. He's very arrogant, very smug. And he tells this one employee of his that he tells his twin daughters, there's no such thing as Santa Claus because no fictional character is going to take the credit for his hard work when he buys his kids Christmas gifts and stuff. So he's one of those type of stooges type people. Anyway, him and his employee get mugged by somebody, beat the crap out of them, and steals the money they're supposed to deposit into the bank. This turns out to be a ruse. He's working with Stevie's father. Stevie's father we don't know much about, but he seems like a shady person and a dangerous person at that. But why? Why this deception and everything? What does he need the money for? Well, when the cops start to investigate what's going on, he gets scared and he frames his co-worker and everything so that the heat won't come down on him. So it turns out he needs this money because he wants his family to live in a better home. He's gonna buy an Australian actual house. His wife, on the other hand, doesn't want to stay there and she wants to go home. They are starting to have problems because of this. And once he finds out that she cheated, he slaps the taste out of her mouth. But then he realizes, you know what, maybe she'll stay if she sees the new house. Well, she doesn't. Nothing much really happens to him after that other than him getting into a fight with like Terry and stuff. But like, it makes me wonder if he's hiding more than what it is, because Stevie's father is all like, because he starts to demand money from like Stevie's father because Stevie's father has not paid him yet. He's all like, you know, you watch your tone with me because I know your secret. I'm all like, what secret is that? That he faked getting robbed and, you know, framed his employee and everything? Or is there something more to it? I don't know, because I can't watch the second season. Now his wife, Sheila, she is a very complex character. In fact, the whole Bill, JJ, and Sheila thing, this should have been explored a heck of a lot more and, like, you know, probably waited to the second season. Anyway, we don't know much about her at first other than she really, really wants to go home and hates Australia. Her husband does not want to, however. Then we find out she's having an affair with JJ. JJ is the one who kind of fixes up the place. He kind of runs the area they're in. He's Australian. And then those two get caught. And when the husband first finds out, he seems like he doesn't really care and is just watching. Then he comes in. He lets JJ get off the hook. Doesn't do nothing to JJ. But then he slaps the complete taste out his like wife's mouth. And she sold that slap like a WWE wrestler. And he tells her, you know what? And this is what you want. You can like go about your way, do whatever you want, and you can go home. So she breaks things off with JJ and he's devastated. So she thinks she gets to go back to England with that of like her two twin daughters. But Bill is like, oh no, 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 no. You're going by yourself. I'm keeping the girls and we're staying in Australia. He thinks by saying this, she will stay. However, she does the complete twist I never saw coming. She tells him, all right, fine. Like, I don't care about nothing no more. I don't even care about our girls and everything. I just don't care about nothing. And she's going to go home by herself. I'm like, what? So she's going to abandon her daughters and everything? Even Bill can't believe this and doesn't understand what the heck is going on. So when Bill showed her their new home, she could care less and everything. And he doesn't understand, like, what is it that she wants? He knows she wants to go back home, but he doesn't want to go there. Then she starts talking about, like, wanting a boat because she sees the neighbor has a boat. She borrows the neighbor's boat, but before she does, it's like she writes a message on the window. We don't know what this message is. But she plans on taking her life. So when JJ went to the house, you know, it says, oh, you know, I'm finally free. And she's out on the boat and she drowns herself until JJ Walker saves her. No, not that JJ Walker from Good Times. I still can't believe they named him this, but yeah, they called this dude JJ Walker. Anyways, he's Australian and he co-runs like that little like community with his mother. His mother is the main one who runs it and she is completely disappointed in him in every way. Not much is known about him other than he's lazy, he gets tired of people complaining about the living conditions over there, and he doesn't want to do nothing to fix things up. He does feel bad about that man dying because, you know, he could have fixed the place up like they said, but he never did. There's also roaches in like the food and just all kinds of other things. But he is having an affair with Sheila. We don't know how this affair started. It would have been nice to see it start, or like a flashback to show how it started and stuff. But we don't know why he's so in love with her, but he is. So somehow, like, he finds out where, like, Sheila's new home is, and he goes over there, I guess, to, like, tell her, like, don't leave, or, like, he loves her more, but she doesn't want nothing to do with him because she wanted to work out her marriage, or at least go back to, like, England. But when he sees that she wrote, "I am finally free," like, on the window, he tries to figure out like where she's going because he thinks she's gonna take her own life. He talks to her neighbor and she's all like, "Oh, she took our boat." And so I guess the neighbor has like another boat, so he took that. In the most plot armor way ever, he meets up with her in moments out by the dock and is able to like free her within a matter of moments. Like the moment she jumped, somehow he sped up to her really fast and was able to like reach her and stuff. And then he saves her. After that, we don't know what's going to happen to them because they're leaving it for the second season. I don't know how he got there so fast. Seriously. And last but not least, Kate. I don't know what race the actress is, and I don't know exactly where she is from. Her accent sounds slightly French or slightly Russian and stuff. So I'm not really sure what she is. Or maybe she might be Ukrainian. Heck if I know. I really don't know. But she has a very interesting storyline. When we first see her, there's something shady about her, but we don't know exactly what. She has a fiance, but she came there alone. And even the people kind of thought that was kind of strange that she went there like alone. We start to see these very quick flashbacks of her and her fiance and how she left him in the hotel room. They make it seem like she fled to get away from her fiance. Maybe he's abusive or something. That's the way it leads up to until we actually meet him when he confronts her. When he finds out, like, he had his mother, because she talks to his mother-in-law for some bizarre reason, and she was able to find out where she was at, and she tells him, and he goes on over there. When she comes back, he's literally waiting for her inside her place. How did he get inside? Heck if I know. When she sees him, she takes off running in fear and he chases behind her. And I'm all like, is he horrible or something? Like, what's going on? So they literally running. He trips her up. When she gets up, she tries to take off again, but he trips her up again, but he's hurt. Then they start talking. He's not bad whatsoever. They make him seem like he's this evil man, but he's actually not. The reason why he didn't go with her is because he simply just doesn't want to live in Australia, and he doesn't want her to go over there either. But she is hiding that of a secret. The secret is she's looking for her young son named Michael. She had a child by another man. And when she met her fiance, she let him know that in advance. But for whatever reason, she gave him up for adoption. And he was put on a train and sent on over to Australia. So this is why she wants to go. So as working as a nurse, she tries to get information on what happens to kids when they're put into orphanage and stuff. She set up this whole thing where she ran into like this man on a bike because he had access to where these kids get to go. He catches her in like his office. She is the queen of getting out of sticky situations. She has major plot armor. She can get out of a sticky situation just by I guess being like a cutesy wootsy woman and everything. But then there's one situation she's in where it's kind of like, how did she get out of that? We don't see. But anyways, this leads her to like an orphanage at a Catholic church. Her and Annie goes there and they meet the priest. And he is played by none other than Bruce Spence. I've seen this man pop up in American movies and stuff that was filmed in like New Zealand, always having a brief role. The Matrix, that Peter Pan movie. But I remember this man from Legend of the Seeker. And I'm just like, holy crap, it's him. And he looks a bit different. His hair's shorter, he's getting older and stuff like that. The man is tall. Anyway, he pretends like he doesn't know what she's talking about until like he realizes what she's after. It's all like, you'll never have your kid again, and God now has your kid, and the Catholic Church and is with the better family, blah 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 blah. So one day when she's just doing her job as a nurse, all of a sudden there is her son. He's with his adoptive parents. Plot armor, I swear. Anyways, so she chases after him but is unable to catch up with him. She gets fired from her job, and one of her co-bosses gives her information on where that boy is living. She goes over there, nobody is over there, and she sneaks into the home and falls asleep on his bed. And so she's woken up by the family coming back in the house. Somehow she is able to sneak out of the house without being detected. Then she meets up with her husband and everything, and when he convinces her to go back to England, she's like, all right, fine. But she has an ulterior motive and everything. She takes his car and she goes to the school where her son is at, and she's all like, hey, I'll drive you back home and everything. So he hops in the car with a stranger, and she tries to get him to remember who she is, but he doesn't remember because he was too young at that time. And he doesn't want nothing to do with her, and he wants to go to his new adoptive family. She lies and says she'll take him there, but first they're just going to take a trip around town. Nah, we don't know what happens after this until next season. Most likely she kidnapped him or is attempting to kidnap him. I feel horrible for her because all she wants in life is just her son. He was in her womb for 9 months. She took care of him for her first few years, but was unable to financially and had to give him up. That has to be one of the hardest things for like a parent to do, especially that of a mother. So that is basically season 1. I really, really want to see season 2 so bad. Like, what the heck happened that caused this show to get canceled, I wonder? Did the writing get bad? Did they not follow up on some storylines from season 1? Like, what the heck happened? I know that in season 1, in the first episode, it had about 6 million viewers, but then like by the second episode and every other episode of that, it went down to 4 million viewers and stuff. That's normally what happened with shows, but it stayed consistent, you know what I'm saying? So it does make me wonder what the heck happened in season 2 that caused this show to get canceled. Anyways, you can watch this on BritBox if you're in America, or you can go to Roku TV and then just subscribe to BritBox over there, or you can just download the BritBox app. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.